Welcome to the Ruin a Bad Guy's Day radio network. Hello everyone, I'm Skip Myers reporting on the catch of the day. And today's catch of the day comes from the FBI. Credit card cloners stole thousands of credit card numbers. Fraudsters use overseas hackers to get card numbers. The FBI says a prolific credit card scammer who continued his crimes from behind bars is now serving a lengthy sentence thanks to a multi-agency investigation into his card cloning operation. From 2014 to 2016, Syracuse, New York resident Daquan Rice, 23, and several associates purchased credit card numbers online from hackers from Russia, Pakistan, and the Ukraine, who sell the information they steal. Rice also bought credit card numbers from a friend who worked at a Syracuse restaurant who had skimmed card numbers from customer credit cards on Rice's behalf. Rice had an associate in New York City with a credit card cloning machine, and he would provide the numbers to the person to make new cards for him. Rice and his accomplices then used the credit cards to buy gift cards, which they would convert into cash or money orders. It's unfortunately not that hard or complicated to get your hands on stolen credit card numbers, said Special Agent Brandon Mercer of the FBI's Albany Division, who investigated this case along with the U.S. Postal Service, New York State Police, and local law enforcement. This information is readily available on the dark web from hackers and other criminals. There is nothing a merchant could have done to stop this fraudulent transaction, he said, because the thieves just put the fake cards in their own names. So even if a cashier asked for identification, the name on the credit card would match their ID. It's a numbers game, he said. They would print out hundreds of these cards. They would go to the register and swipe, and if it didn't work, they'd just throw it away and use the next one, Mercer said. A lot of these cards were only able to be used once because the cardholder noticed the fraudulent activity and then shut the card down. The fraudsters made about $80,000 over 2 years. After his 2016 arrest for credit card cloning, Rice tried to continue his scheme from his jail cell. In 2017, he worked with an accomplice who was not in prison to put more than $8,000 in funds stolen through the credit card fraud scheme on Rice's prison commissary account. Rice tried to use that account to write large checks, but the prison shut down his account for the unusual activity and then contacted the FBI. Rice later pleaded guilty to wire fraud, money laundering, and aggravated identity theft, and in October he was sentenced to more than 11 years in prison. Several other accomplices have also been sentenced for their roles in this scheme. Mercer said, large-scale credit card schemes like this one are important investigations for the FBI because of the sheer volume of crime with hundreds of credit card numbers and thousands of dollars stolen. It's also a reminder to the public to be vigilant about fraud. It's important to do the simple things, checking bank statements, checking your credit report regularly, and making sure you're signed up for any suspicious transaction alerts from your bank or credit card issuer, Mercer says. So let's dive into this article a little bit deeper. And here's the section I want to dive into a little bit more. It says here that Rice and several of his associates purchased credit card numbers online from hackers in Russia, Pakistan, and the Ukraine. And then they would sell the information that they stole. Rice also bought credit card numbers from a friend who worked at a Syracuse restaurant who had skimmed the numbers. These are the credit card numbers from customer credit cards on his behalf. And then Rice had an associate in New York City with a credit card cloning machine. It's a skimming device that he would provide the numbers to the person to make the new cards for him. This is interesting because this is a criminal enterprise operating for the sole purpose of using your stolen information for financial gain. So let's break this down. The first paragraph says that they purchased credit card numbers online from hackers in Russia, Pakistan, and the Ukraine. So again, what's troubling about this is that your personal information, your financial records are in the hands of fraudsters all over the world. So it makes it very interesting to me how Americans' financial and personal information is in the hands of bad actors, fraudsters, criminals that are located in countries all over the world. And what's interesting about this is that the article doesn't go into explain really what these networks are, but these are carding networks or carders. And carding is a term that describes the trafficking of stolen credit cards. It's the trafficking of bank accounts and other personal information that is sold online as part of a service to fraudsters. And so these activities involve the procurement of certain personal details that belong to you in your financial records, just not credit card numbers, but everything that surrounds the credit card number. So it's going to be your name and address, the CVV number, the date, the expiration date. And it's all, again, part of a bigger scheme that involves money laundering techniques. So a lot of the modern carding sites today are actual full-service websites, full-service commercial entities and businesses that are actually out there, not even just on the dark web, but actually on the internet itself. And if you don't know, feel free to Google carding network or carding forums, and you'll see the proliferation of the companies that are out there selling stolen identification to the highest bidder. So a lot of this, again, started years ago, and even before the internet. The earliest acquisition of methods to steal your personal information associated to financial records or personal records is carding methods. Before even carding was even the word back then, it was just pretty much dumpster diving or trashing for financial data. In other words, raiding mailboxes or raiding trash cans for information and working with insiders with the different information that can use that bank card information or personal information and then sell it to the highest bidder. And again, that's a lot of times used in putting together the carding network information so that they can put together credit card numbers via bin attacks, or sometimes the carders will attempt to distribute different means of guessing different information because they don't always have every piece of that personal identification that belongs to you to deliver on the fraudulent transaction. In other words, they're trying to discover valid numbers by submitting numbers across a high number of e-commerce sites all at the same time. So let's talk about the second part of this. So it says here that Rice also bought credit card numbers from a friend who worked at a restaurant who had skimmed credit card numbers from customer credit cards on his behalf. So how do you do that? Well, you can Google credit card skimmer, and you'll see all kinds of different equipment, pretty much equipment that you could fit in your pocket. And this is something that's pretty prevalent a lot of times when your credit card leaves your hand for payment. So it could be a restaurant. You hand your card off to the waiter, and he goes to whatever machine or pin pad for you to pay for your meal. But meanwhile, in his pocket, he's got a credit card skimmer, a credit card cloning device, and he'll swipe your card on that device, and it'll capture everything that's embedded in the magnetic stripe. And so what that does is help them acquire all that credit card and associate financial data that's on that credit card. And these skimmers can be used at not just restaurants or bad guys in person, but they're skimmers at ATM machines, they're at gas stations, and at different places that will intercept that credit card data at that point of sale or before the point of sale. So they're stealing this information to be reused again. So these credit card cloning machines, or the skimming devices, you can Google this. A lot of the major legitimate online e-commerce retailers, you can purchase these devices from low as $20 up to several $100s, depending on the sophistication of that electronic skimming device. So you can buy these devices legally on the net. Very simple to do. And that's just the beginning of it. So you're using the skimming machine to steal credit card numbers from legitimate people. And that's just the start of it. So the other information you will need as a hacker, or in this case, like this individual that was busted for doing this, is that you'll need access to maybe other means. So maybe your fraudulent business is really growing and you just don't have enough customers that you're stealing credit card numbers in person. You go to the dark web, and not even the dark web, just the internet, and you're going to these carding forums and these carding networks. They call them credit card shops, and there's what they call dumps with PIN numbers and different things on the dark net where through carding forums you can purchase this information, stolen credit card information, BIN numbers, PIN numbers, CVV numbers, all the things that you need to make these stolen credit cards real. They're available on the dark web or on the internet through these carding forums. So once you do that, you got your skimming machine. You're skimming some through people that you've partnered with, and different locations at you set up a bogus skimming machine at an ATM or at a gas station. You got friends that work in restaurants like this guy had, who's using a skimming machine to steal credit card numbers. But then you need to do something with it. So the next thing you would probably need, aside from the skimming device or purchasing stolen identities and credit card numbers off the dark web, would purchase some blank credit cards. And you're probably asking, how do you do that? Well, again, the internet's great. So you type in blank credit card stock on the web, and you can purchase 100-pack of blank credit card stock for about $275. And they have a nice little EMV chip on there that really makes it look really nice. So I purchased those cards. They have magnetic stripes on them. I've already skimmed stolen information in various ways, purchased your information off the dark web so I can imprint these mag stripes with this stolen information. But still, it's not a real card yet. There's nothing on it. Well, the next thing I would do, as a fraudster, they would purchase an embossing machine. And you can purchase these embossing machines off where? The internet. Not on the dark web, but on the internet. So for a couple $100, now you purchase an embossing machine. And you can emboss the actual credit card number that you've stolen and imprinted on the mag stripe now on the front of the card along with the expiration date. And so lo and behold, you have a credit card that looks to be real and usable at a retailer of your choice. The next part of this is that the special agent says there was nothing a merchant could have done to stop the fraudulent transaction because the thieves put the fake cards in their own names. So even if the cashier asked for identification, the name on the credit card would have matched their ID. So the bad guys know how the system works. If the card looks a little suspicious, and the cashier looks at it and says, I need to see some identification. And the bad guy's not going to put a different name on there. He's going to put the same name. Or in this case, at this level of sophistication today, the bad guy is counterfeiting real driver's licenses. So the names will match up perfectly, and it looks like it's a regular transaction in a legitimate credit card. So why is this important for a physical retailer to know? Well, that's because your PIN pad that is set up to accept EMV chip-ready credit cards, it does have a default on it. It's called a fallback. If the EMV chip doesn't read, in this case, the bad guys are manufacturing counterfeit credit cards with stolen information. They're not embedding that information into that bogus chip or that chip that looks like a chip on these stolen credit card stock that they're using. But what they're doing is imprinting that information on the mag stripe. So your PIN pad is set up, hopefully, to read chip-enabled, EMV-enabled credit cards. But if the chip reader on your PIN pad cannot read the EMV chip, after 3 attempts, it defaults, or what the programmers say, it falls back to a mag stripe, because nobody wants to lose a transaction, and no one wants an upset customer. So what happens is that card defaults to the mag stripe, and the customer swipes the card like they normally would. Well, the bad guys know that. They know that the chip's not going to read. They're not inputting or embedding your stolen information there. They're doing it on the mag stripe. They act like they're using the PIN pad. They know the chip's not going to read. They know the PIN pad is on a default or fall back to the mag stripe, and then they use the mag stripe. So why is this important? It's important because so many retailers and people in the fraud prevention business maybe don't really understand how the PIN pad works. Why am I still getting more fraud? Why is these things happening in my cash line? Why are we still getting chargebacks? Well, it's because your PIN pad falls back or defaults to the mag stripe when the PIN pad cannot read the EMV chip. All right, let's break down the article a little bit more and to emphasize what the special agent said about it's important to do the simple things. Checking your bank statements, checking your credit report regularly, and making sure you have signed up for any suspicious transaction alerts on your bank or credit card that they may offer. This is very important. And so these are different ways to protect your identity or protect yourself. This type of fraud, when your information is on the dark web or available in these carding forums, which it most likely is, don't be so naive to believe that your information hasn't been compromised through some major data breach in the last several years. It probably has. But ways you can protect yourself from this in case it has been compromised and it's going to be used, let's say, in a credit card transaction or even in some other means is to, one, change and strengthen your passwords on a regular basis. So set up a routine where you're changing and strengthening your passwords. So I always recommend an 8 to 12 character password that involves upper and lowercase letters, and then it actually uses numbers and special characters. So when you use that combination, it makes it much harder for a bad guy to hack your password. And once you change your passwords on a regular basis, let's say the bad guys compromise an account of yours and obtain your password, well, if you're changing it on a regular basis, they're not going to be able to use that password like they thought they should have. Also, be careful about any information you share on your personal accounts. Especially people on their Facebook accounts, things like that, how old you are, your full name, your phone number, different things like that the bad guys could use to maybe social engineer different sites to obtain more information, like maybe different identifiers personal to you that would help open up an account. So be careful about how you use your personal and share your personal information. And just like the special agent said, it's so important to check those credit reports that you have on a regular basis. I like to do it on a quarterly basis through the three main credit bureaus, Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. Very important to do that to see if there's any strange or suspicious activity on your credit reports. One thing, too, we mentioned earlier, some of the earliest forms of carding involved dumpster diving or mailbox raiding or, people, bad guys rummaging through trash cans. Buy a shredder at your house. Have it there when you get your mail or you're done with your mail, especially if it's involving personal mail from your banks or financial institutions. Use that shredder and shred that mail so that if it is fished out of garbage cans by bad guys, it's highly unlikely that they're going to be able to read any of that personal information. Again, always keep an eye on your financial statements. We talked about credit reports, but your financial statements that come from your credit card companies and issuers in your bank accounts to make sure that there's no suspicious activity on those accounts. And if there is, you need to report that immediately. And one other thing, too, I keep talking about this. If you do travel or if you're maybe you don't have Wi-Fi at your house, you go to coffee shops or some other business that offers free Wi-Fi, consider using a VPN. A VPN is a virtual private network. They're very inexpensive, and what they pretty much do is if you go to a free Wi-Fi location, you connect through a VPN, and through the virtual private network, it encrypts your data so no one else can steal it. And this is a way, again, if you don't have a VPN, the bad guys will be an imposter. In other words, you may think you're logging on to Skip's Coffee Shop Wi-Fi, but it's Skip's Coffee Shop misspelled Wi-Fi, and it's a bad guy in a parking lot, and you're going through his Wi-Fi and his PC, and he's key logging or logging every keystroke, your password, your usernames, or anything that you do on any account, and he's able to get that. And he will not be able to get that if you use a legitimate VPN service. So take that in consideration when you're out using free Wi-Fi out and about. So again, let's go back to some of the easy steps here. Check your bank statements on a regular basis. Check your credit report at least quarterly. Use strong and long passwords, and consider using a VPN service when you log on to free Wi-Fi hotspots. That's very important. So the moral of this story is to understand that the bad guys are out there. They're really all over the place. They're international. Just like this case, this particular fraudster here in the U.S. is purchasing Americans' personal, financial, and personal information from countries like Russia and Pakistan and the Ukraine. And the biggest question is, how do these bad guys get this information? And, we may never know. But know that it is happening. And the best way you can safeguard yourself is using some common sense, taking your security of your personal information very seriously, and understand everything that you do on the internet has the potential of being compromised by a fraudster. So stay vigilant about fraud. Educate yourselves and those around you at home and at your business, and be very, very careful during the holidays. Have a great day, everyone, and let's all ruin a bad guy's day.
Thanks for listening to Ruin a Bad Guy's Day radio podcast with Skip Myers. If you liked our show, please tell your friends and colleagues.
You can learn more about us at ruinabadguysday.com or visit us on Twitter and Facebook at Ruin a Bad Guy's Day.
Join us for another episode of Ruin a Bad Guy's Day radio podcast.
The information provided in Ruin a Bad Guy's Day radio podcast is for informational purposes only. It should not be considered legal or financial advice. You should consult with legal counsel or other professionals to determine what may be best for your individual or organizational needs.